let's begin. Let's tell us a bit more about yourself, where you grew up. Just.
Okay. Well, my name is Darnica. Darnica Hookfin, to be exact. That's my name. I grew up in Ohio, so I'm here in the United States. I grew up in Ohio, moved to Florida when I was about 16, and then I went to an HBCU called Florida A&M University in Tallahassee, Florida. And then I went to
HBU.
Yeah. So an HBCU is a historically Black college or university. So I attended one of those. My specific university was created October 3rd, 1887. Just drill that into your head. So,
okay.
Right. The founding date of all of your university. So, but yeah, it started in 1887. So about slavery in America ended in 1865. So not even that long after, people were starting universities for Black studies. And initially, Florida A&M was actually called Florida State Normal College for Colored People. So that was the original name. And it was a school where people who were recently freed slaves could come to the school and become educators, become teachers.
That is so cool.
Yeah, so I love it. I love the legacy there. I love the history there. I study history there, so obviously I love it a lot. And then I moved to Redding, California in 2015, right after I finished college. So, and now I am in DC. I've been everywhere.
That is so cool. And what inspired you to study history?
I don't know why, but I just always I know, like, my peers would always complain about history, but I love the story nature of it. I love story time. So in high school, I actually had some really great government teachers and some really great history teachers. And they really, I remember in ninth grade, as young as ninth grade, my very first Black teacher, I didn't have a Black woman as my teacher until then. And she was my African American studies teacher. Her name is Miss Allen Harris. We're friends on Facebook. I don't think we're on Instagram, but she's an incredible woman, and I'm still friends with her on Facebook to this day because she really changed my life. Like, she just brought the information and the history and even some of the traumatic aspects of it, but she made it sound so hopeful and so beautiful and she just painted such a beautiful story. And I feel like, that's my story. Like, I want to learn as much as I can about it.
Wow.
Yeah. So it made me take personal ownership of my own story, hearing it from a Black woman herself explain to me who we are and what our purpose is. Like, the sense of purpose came about as I learned from her.
Wow.
Yeah. It just stuck with me. I don't know why. It just kind of, when I got to college, I was like, I was a political science major for about a week, and then I changed my major to history. So I guess that was the way it was supposed to go.
Wow. And what inspires people to actually not go to a normal university, but go to a historically Black university? What is the background behind that?
Yeah. So initially, for a lot of people, in a lot of cases, especially in the South in particular, Black people weren't allowed to go to any other universities except HBCUs. So some schools had active segregation. Some schools had, like, for example, in the city of Tallahassee, where I went to school, there is Florida A&M University, which is where I went, and then there's Florida State University, which is a more popular, well-known state school. And that school originally was a school designed for white women. And so no one else was allowed to go there. And so even that was revolutionary for the time because women weren't vastly educated. But most HBCUs in their particular environment were catered to the education of Black people because nobody else was willing to educate Black people. So, wow. And today, I'd say, like, the current day draw to an environment like that is the historical aspect, the fact that, our ancestors built this despite all the triumph and not triumph, but all of the hardship and turmoil, is the word I was looking for, all the things that they were facing, they still decided to persevere and provide and create something that was going to benefit a legacy and benefit so many people after them. So I think that that in itself, like, I remember sitting on my graduation day in that auditorium filled with Black students who were getting degrees and just having chills, like, just trying to hold back tears because I'm like, my ancestors died for this. Like, I'm sitting in someone's dream right now. I am sitting in a legacy right now. Like, this is mine. Like, I get to take a hold of this and run forward. And it's magical, honestly. I highly recommend. 10 out of 10. I say, if you are Black and you want to be educated in higher education in America, HBCUs are definitely the way to go.
Wow. That is incredible. So I asked you a few questions just for our live, and I think everyone is curious, especially Africans, wherever they are. There's this curiosity in understanding the difference between Black American and African American, and is there a difference, and why do some people identify with one part and some people identify with the other part, and why does that even exist when a white American can just be called an American, but every other race has to have something attached?
Right. Oh man, this is such a big conversation. I have my perspective on that, so I'll share that. So for me, I would say a lot of people would, personally, I'll speak for myself. I personally will call myself an African American, and I identify that as, even though I've never been to Africa physically. I know it sounds crazy, but personally, I identify as an African American because I like to pay homage and respect and just have a sense of reference for where I come from and where my ancestors have come from, and that is most definitely their identity and where my descent comes from. But I am also 100% American, and for a lot of people, I know the temptation is ever present to just pack up, and a lot of Black people want to pack up and go back to Africa and leave America behind and just say, forget the whole thing. But for me, I've always felt like, I don't know if I could pack, like, I definitely will go to Africa and spend some time there in my life, but for months at a time. But I definitely, I'm like, my ancestors bled, died, sewed, cried, you name it, they've done it here. They've built, and I'm like, I want every part of that. I want every piece of what they worked for. I want every piece of what they built here. This is just as much mine as it is anyone else's. So I take full ownership over America in that sense. I feel just as much responsible for America as any European or any person who has come here and has claimed some type of identity in this country as, America being theirs. America is mine too.
Wow. And why is that? Why? Oh, no, carry on.
I was going to answer your question.
I wanted to ask, why is there an emphasis for some people regarding the titles, because there'll be those who are like, no, I'm Black American or I'm African American. Why is it separate when it could actually be the same thing?
Right. I think it's probably a matter of semantics most of the time, but I think typically when it comes to maybe statistical information, when you say African American, you're speaking in reference to what I mentioned as far as being of African descent and probably being, your origins deriving from enslaved Africans that were brought to America against their will. And so typically when someone says Black or just Black American, they might be referencing, although they might also be referencing the same thing, a Black African American, they might also be referencing the diaspora, and they might be referencing people who are Black but may not identify as African American. in that particular sense. So you have Afro-Latinas and Latinos, and you also have, people who may not have the same origin story to America, who have come to America a lot later in history, or maybe that they are from African European or from Africa itself. So it kind of like that term kind of, I feel like, and this is just my opinion, it encompasses the variety, like all the chocolate that exists around the world.
Yeah. Wow. And why is, like, for some, and not for most, but for some, there's this disassociation, like they don't want anything to do with Africa or being associated with being African. Why does that happen, and what do you think about that?
Ooh, well, unfortunately, I think I've heard some people say, some very well-meaning Black folks in America say that they're not African. I don't know nothing about Africa. I'm not from Africa. I'm American. And they say that to try to present some type of ownership over America, like I stated. But I think it is very dangerous and not completely healthy at all times to disassociate yourself with Africa, especially when you wear brown skin, dark skin that comes from that continent. I think that it's important to know where that comes from, where it came from, and why it came from that place, how you got here. There's so much cognitive dissonance, and basically what that is like when people just detach from reality, and they detach from, and as a defense mechanism. So it's a way of survival for a lot of people to detach from that because they don't have answers for it, and they don't have a reason for it. They can't give a reason for why am I African and I'm here? Why have I never seen Africa and I'm in America? So I think for a lot of people, they don't have a response for the questions they might get behind that, or they just might feel it might come with a lot of stress, like for me personally, I've processed so much of this, so it's natural for me to think about it and to process with myself about it 10 times over. I've probably done it 100 times in my life already, and that's natural for me. But some people have not started that journey, and some people have not engaged with the why, the who, what, when, where, why of why you're here, why you're standing in the spot you're standing in. Like, what's the God story in that? For me, that's what gives me comfort personally, is the God story of why I'm here. And I know that God did not bring, and not that God brought, people brought Black people to America. People were stolen. Like, I'm so clear with myself on that, because I don't want to tell myself that God brought me here, because that's not the story. We were stolen, but God did something here. God established something here, and I'm a firm believer. Here I go preaching, but I'm a firm believer that wherever we plant our feet, we have dominion over. We have authority over. And I think of it as expansion. I think of it as a legacy that is expanded out of Africa into what we know as the diaspora.
Wow.
Yeah, but pray for your fellow Black folks out here in America, because a lot of people do disassociate from Blackness because they find negativity in it. They find just negative beauty standards, negative ideas, just all these different things that have been attached to it, and they've taken it as their identity. But then they say, "Well, I don't want to be that, so I'm just not going to be anything." And we have so many walking around with no identity, like this nameless, faceless people who, no matter what, are going to be distinguished or identified by the color of the skin that they're wearing. So whether you like it or not, you will be regarded as such, despite the fact that you actually identify with it.
Wow. It's true. In South Africa, there's a problem when you don't know who your father is, because a lot of as we know in the world, a lot of us grow without fathers in our household. A lot of us grow without knowing our fathers. So, but especially for a man or a boy, it's of great importance to know who your dad is and to know his family. And people can't move on until they've actually figured out who they are completely. And they also feel a sense of within. So it makes sense when others, because of the trauma, suffered, or because of, we can even know that it's even an intentional thing, that people, any association of Africa because of the way it's been portrayed. But you are never whole, or you are never full or at peace without knowing who you fully are and knowing where you come from and how you can actually move on in life knowing your purpose.
Wow.
Sure. So it's so interesting. That is so interesting. And I know, because I have a lot of American friends and I've asked this question a lot of times, like, why is there a disconnect, or why is it that a lot of African Americans do not know anything about Africa? And it's your typical African stereotypes. You see it in the Black American movies as well. You see it everywhere, and you're like, what the hell is happening? Can you explain a bit more about why that happened?
Yeah, so I just want to apologize about those. I know exactly what you're talking about. And just hearing some of your stories of things people would say to you, I'm like, who raised these people? Like, what? But yeah, like there is, I think it's so interesting to explain, but I would say from my personal perspective that a lot of the stereotypes that come along with Africa have been things that it's kind of like our perception of what it is from over here, from across the ocean. So those perceptions come from biases that we were presented with. They come from prejudices that we were presented with, not necessarily our own, because we haven't been there. We haven't been to Africa. So we're being presented with an idea of what that was and what it is. And we adapt it, but we make jokes out of it. It's comedy. And, people say, I won't even repeat some of the things I've heard growing up. I remember when I was in elementary school, there was an African family, and forgive me, I don't know where in Africa they were from. I do realize Africa is a continent, not a country, for those out there listening. But, I remember when that family came, and the names that they were called by Black people, by other Black Americans, they were called names, and just jokes were made, and it was always made to be this comedic thing, but obviously it wasn't funny for them, and I'm pretty sure that they probably have to go to therapy now for all the stuff that was probably said to them. But, I think about all the ways that we've just accepted a lie over Africa for ourselves. And then also growing up for me, I saw Feed the Children commercials nonstop all day, every day on TV. And all I had in mind was impoverished communities and dirt and huts and all these different things. And then I saw these white women in particular rescuing them and feeding them and providing nutrients, so to speak. So it's so interesting, some of the things you see, and like the way you can pull different themes from it, and a whole message is being portrayed, a whole message is being communicated to a group of people. For one, Americans in general, that Africa is not a place you want to be. Africa is not anything good. Nothing good comes out of an entire continent. And so when I got older, I started to challenge that in particular, because for my personal, for my own mental state, I'm like, okay, no, I do not believe, and America included, if you believe the narrative that you've been presented with, then that means that every highly densely populated Black community in the world is impoverished.
Imagine.
if you let America tell it. And that never set right with me. And being wealthy or being affluent as a Black person was rare, and you were a part of a very, very small percentage in the world. That can't be true. I refuse to believe that an entire continent of people are just so unbelievably helplessly poor that they need America to defend them or to pull them out of poverty or to feed them porridge. Like, I just, no way. So, and that includes South America, that includes North America, that includes Europe, that includes Asia. There are Afro-Asians. Don't get me started. Anyway. But, in general, like, anywhere that Black people are, we've been told that they're poor. And that they have a worthlessness attached to them. That's not true. And I think that a lot of Black people in America actually believe that. They actually subscribe to that thought process because they have yet to challenge it themselves, within themselves. And so we talk about all over the world, we're talking about challenging systems and governments and all these things. But the one thing that I've been sitting with lately as well is that I have to challenge myself first. I have to challenge this within me first, because when I look at an image of a dark-skinned Black person versus a lighter-skinned Black person, what do I say in my head? What is my first response? Do I say, ugh? Do I say, I used to do that, and I'm dark? I used to look at, like, I legit used to look at an image, like 2 images of 2 different Black people and say ill to one because they were darker or because they had broader features. And I'm like, but they look more like me than the other image. And I remember being 19, 18, 20 years old, like, oh, snap. Like, I think that. Like, I actually, and I don't even know what all the thoughts are attached to it, but that came to my mind. And it wasn't, I don't believe it was my thought. I don't believe it was something, I mean, I've adapted to it, but it doesn't have to be mine. And so I made a conscious decision at that point to separate myself from that and to see all images of Black people as beautiful. And so, and see, I can go on a whole rant about this.
There's a friend who actually explained it, saying that when you are taught geography or you are taught history, especially pertaining other nations, like nothing is actually ever presented, or no knowledge is ever presented, or the knowledge of Africa, as you mentioned before, will be what you saw on TV, because no one else is telling you about Africa, You see it, you don't see it anywhere, besides media, besides what the white media is actually portraying about that, Africa as a whole. And she was like, no one has ever taught us anything else about Africa besides those ads. Besides, even with other people going or coming to Africa, I think there's a story where one of my friends said that she runs a youth group, and they normally have like Americans come through and they swap yearly. But she said that there was this African American kid who was so excited about coming to South Africa, and then on one of the days they said they're going to Soweto, which is like quote unquote a ghetto, and he was excited because that's where he also comes from, But once they got to the ghetto, like South African ghettos are totally different to American ghettos. Like South African ghettos, you will find your middle class, upper middle class, and your lower income groups. The homes are like, they're normal looking, 3 rooms, big houses, clean area. We know that the white media portrays it as a dirty area, but Black people love to keep their places clean. But when this kid got there, he was so disappointed, because I think for him, he thought that he would be able to identify or become higher going into a ghetto. And what he was confronted with was a youth who will more privileged than he was, a black youth who were more privileged than he was. And he was disappointed to the point where he didn't leave the bus. He stayed on the bus. And he was like, I can't associate with this. And you can call it a traumatic experience, but there's this thing also when people come to Africa because of how Africa has been presented. When they see the progressive Africa, you'll never see, even with mission trips, with any trips, you'll never see the amazing parts of Africa because of what you've been fed about Africa. You'll go to a restaurant and have the most amazing meal. You'll sleep in the most amazing homes, but you won't take pictures of those homes. You'll instead take pictures of you going into a shanty town with the poor kids, instead of also showing the other sides, the roads that you travel, the traffic. We also have traffic. Like, people are also like, you guys have traffic in Africa, and you're like, guys, yeah, we have traffic. So it's also, as you said, like, you have to do the own mental work within you, so that when you are confronted with another reality of another continent or of another person, that you are able to digest that information. Or else, when you haven't had that inner working within, you'll completely miss it. Like, completely miss it.
That's so true. Oh my gosh. Oh, you said a lot of things. Like, personally, I'm currently in the process of questioning the devastating impact of missions work in Africa. And as a Christian, that is a hard statement to make, because I believe that the gospel should go forth, but I don't like the way it's gone forth. I don't like the way that it's been misrepresented. And I know one thing I do know for certain is that when Jesus, the true and living God, is given to a people, or presented, not given, but invitation is offered to a people, then they experience Jesus for themselves, and that looks like them. It looks like them and God. It doesn't look like European Presbyterian or or Methodist, or it doesn't look like denominations, Catholicism. It doesn't look like all these denominations that have gotten that have been established in Africa. Because I think of it the same way I think of, and bear with me with my examples, because I know my thought process can be a little bit radical, but I think of in terms of, in my lifetime, the American-Iraqi War. And I think about how I would see on the news as a kid us bombing their country, a neighborhood, and then dropping food down in baskets. And I always thought that was the most underhanded, shady thing I've ever seen in my life. I'm like, who does this? Like, what kind of mess? And I realized that as I got older, I started to kind of use that same template for what missionary work has been a lot of the time, where we've done colonization throughout Africa. We've stolen, we've robbed, we've devastated. We've literally just completely destroyed a place. Not beyond repair, I don't believe that, but destroyed a place and beaten this hopefulness out of a people almost like permanently, like just almost to the point that it was just like, I mean, it's like every effort to stomp it out of you has been had to all Black people, honestly, all over the world. And then then we go and bring missionaries into those places. That's us dropping food. That's us saying, hey, I'm going to destroy everything. I'm going to take your kids. I'm going to make you do all these things. I'm going to make you produce whatever Europe needed throughout the hundreds of years that colonization has been happening in America as well. And then I'm going to send you missionaries, because now you savages need Jesus. Now you
need to look like us. You don't need Jesus. You actually need to look like us.
Exactly. And you can tell that. People say, I've had so many conversations with, some of our white friends out there that think that that's not what that was. And I'm like, yeah, when you go into any church, you could go to any church in America, any Black church in America, I'm sure any black church in Africa right now and see a picture of white Jesus hanging up. And people revere white Jesus. They revere that image as God, and that image is not God. I don't know who that person is. It's not God. And it's like, and to me, when you can have people worship, to me, the image of white Jesus is a graven image. It is an image that is it's an idol. It's not a God.
False idol.
Exactly. It's a false idol. And so when people worship that, they don't get an authentic relationship with Jesus Christ. They don't see the manifestation of his presence. They don't see the miracles and signs and wonder and the power. And now we have, in 2020, we have hundreds of thousands probably of young black people all over the world who are separating themselves from Christianity because there's no power in it.
Yeah.
And
because it doesn't look like me.
Exactly. It doesn't look like me. Why would I worship the God of another group of people? You know, basically. Because, which is essentially like this form of paganism, like where in all cultures, the gods look like the people, except in black culture. Our God is a white Jesus. That doesn't make any sense. Like, it just doesn't. And honestly, personally, I'm still unpacking so much of that, but I do know for certain that I've had to, when I close my eyes, and if I see white Jesus, that's not the person I need to be talking to. That is an image that I've accepted as my God. It's not because we so willingly absorb and we eat what's given to us. And, it's time to reject that food. It's time to reject that meal that's being placed in front of us. And we're being told, here, eat this. Eat these lies. Like, eat this these beauty standards. Eat this colonization, this destructive and dysfunctional thought pattern. Eat this so that you don't actually see the truth in yourself. Because what happens when people don't actually know their identity or receive their identity? They are essentially powerless. So I think the power in it, where you become scary, is when you become a scary black person in particular, a black woman in particular, is when you start knowing where you came from and who you came from and why you came here. When you have all those purposeful notations figured, and they take time, they're not going to come overnight, but that journey is one of the most beautiful journeys you can go on.
It is.
Because it's restorative in nature. And I've met God most when I've questioned all this stuff. Yeah. Like going to an HBCU and being a history major and being educated by strong, intellectual black people, and also being a Christian was not for the faint at heart. Like, they came for me on the daily basis. Like, they really wanted to know, like, why are you a Christian? Like, did you not hear what we talked about class today?
And that's the African thing. With a lot of Africans, not even just South Africans, there's this, why are you still a Christian when you know that this religion is white? There's this narrative now of, like, against Christianity because it's white. Everything is white, from church to worship to everything, and it's like, why would you follow a religion that doesn't see your people, whose God doesn't look like you, as you've mentioned before, because we've been fed lies for so long, to the point where Africa doesn't even realize that religion actually started here. Not only Christianity, but even Islam started. Islam is also black. Christianity is also black, and we still have deep roots. Like, the Ethiopian church is one of the strongest and one of the oldest churches in the world. But because of this white narrative, this white Christianity, we haven't been taught that. And all we see and all we can assume. Oh no, sorry. My phone went. Okay, I'm back. So now there's a fight, there's this thing with Black people, and they look down upon Christian Black people, because it's like, why would you be in such a religion that does not see you?
Right, exactly. And that's where, I see a lot of people, and I respect every single journey, especially that a Black person has to walk through to come back to health. I'm not afraid of people in their journeys. Like, I'm not afraid that people are, they don't believe in God anymore. Like, I'm not, but I believe that everything comes full circle. Like, people will find their way back to what's true. And I know people, friends of mine, who are leaving Christianity, who are rejecting the whole thing altogether, God, Jesus, all of it, because, and identify as atheists even, because they don't want any parts of it. But for me personally, I knew that wasn't an option for me. So what I had to do was I had to decolonize Jesus. I had to decolonize my faith. And I had to get to the bottom of it, the root of it. Who is Jesus? Jesus was a Middle Eastern man. And even that.
Yeah, even that.
Even that, because, I recognize the Middle East is an actual place, but it is a political term. It's not. There is Asia, there is Europe, and there is no continent called the Middle East. It is a political term. It's a racist political term that was used to segregate brown people out of that area and separate them into a category, And here I go. I told you I'm radical. People like to argue with me on things like that, but it is what it is. But anyway, so for that I had to, Jesus was brown, period. So I had to reintroduce myself to him. I had to reintroduce myself to the nature of God that way. And that God himself is not a person. Like, he is, he's beyond that. Like, and that's even hard. Again, this cognitive thought process that we have, like, it's hard to connect with something that doesn't have arms and legs and a face. Like, we as humans, we have issues with that for obvious reasons. But God doesn't walk around in skin. And I mean, except when he was in Jesus, obviously, but he doesn't, he's not a physical being. So, that to me, that's comforting, because I'm like, okay, well, he's not limited by the skin on our bodies and this limitation that we as humans carry. And that means he's way beyond this whole racial conflict and all these disgusting things that have been done with race. But that does not mean that he does not care about it. And a lot of church right now, a lot of Western church will tell you that God is not interested in healing racial issues, first of all, that God is not interested in restoring Black people from the trauma. Like, people are really out here acting like that's second rate. Like, that's not something that's on God's heart. And they're also acting like God can't care about more things than one at a time. I'm like, okay, I definitely don't want no parts of the God y'all serving, because no. But I'm like, God is interested. He's very much interested, even now, in the restoration of a people. Like, he's not just letting us out here be destroyed because for somebody else's game. Like I don't believe that. I cannot subscribe to that idea. So I believe that God is all 100% for the Black girl magic, the Black boy joy, all that. Like he is here for it. Because people are being restored to health again. People are taking time, and they're finding themselves, and they're going their roundabout ways, and they're taking the long road, and the scenic route, and the short route. Everybody's doing their thing, and I believe everybody will get to a place that they need to be. It's just, we have to have grace for one another, and the rest of America needs to have grace for us as well. The rest of the world needs to have grace for all Black people who are processing these things.
Sure. Wow. And that's a whole bigger topic. Yeah. But that is so good. And what do you think, like, why do you feel that unity is important between Africa and the diaspora, because I feel there's an attack. There's just as everything Black is attacked, and unity is one of the things that is mostly attacked. This thing, even with Pan-Africanism here on the continent, or even everywhere, throughout the world, once a leader has that thing, or that knowing that Africa should unite, the diaspora should unite, and we all should go and pursue this goal of making Africa great again. There's always an attack on that leader, and he'll be assassinated, or something will happen. There's this attack even with unity between African Americans and Africa, when there's no understanding between all of us, and when, especially me coming from the US and being around the Black community, being in another country, I see the importance of unity. I see the importance, I can see God's plan in why this needs to happen, and why there's such a big attack within unity. What are your thoughts regarding that, and why do you feel that African Americans should unite, or even just learn more about Africa?
Oh yeah, that's so important. I think that Pan-Africanism, I am here for it. I think that every attempt for it, like you said, has been shot down, literally. Every attempt at even Black nationalism in America has been shot down. And people hear Black nationalism, they think white nationalism. Those two are not the same thing. They're very different concepts. One is racist and the other one is not. And I would tell people to argue with your mother on that one, because I'm not going to do it. Anyway. So
don't waste your time.
Right, exactly. But, even those, I think that it's so important for African Americans and Black people all over the diaspora in general to unify, because we have a common interest. We have there's a common thread here, and we all are somehow suffering from the same things all over the world, no matter where. And at the same time, it's not even all about the suffering. It's about the culture. It's about the beauty. It's about the magicalness that is Black people. I've come in contact with so many different beautiful African people throughout my 20s, and I'm always so pleasantly surprised how similar we are. The culture, the things we say our parents say, or you see you see the memes and all these different things, and you're like, we are the same. That is so nuts. How we had a whole ocean between us, but we were the same. And so obviously there's this commonality that brown people, Black people in particular from the continent of Africa, we share it. And so I think it's only natural that we gravitate towards one another, and that we are drawn. Right now we're like this. I think we need to be like this. We need to, and I think that's the whole point of the Black Power Fist, unification. Anyway, but it's drawing all these people together because it's only natural. It's only a matter of time. But like you said, every time there was an attempt to do it, it was just shot down completely, because people are threatened by that. Why? We gotta ask
White people are threatened by that.
Exactly. So personally, my own personal process has been, why in the world are people so threatened by a group of people who are also the poorest people in the world? Except we're not. That's not true, right? And so there's this. So I think I don't necessarily blame people. Here we go. I don't. This is not about people. This has to be about principalities. This has to be about some other fight, some spiritual war battle. And I hope that doesn't sound too crazy to some people who are watching, but for me, I'm thinking of this in terms of, I can hate another person. I can be upset with another person because every attempt that I made to be great or be good, they shot it down and they tried to destroy it. or I can recognize that there is something that is actually influencing them, that is actually dictating their mind and their soundness of mind, and they are abiding with that. And so that is that, like, that thing doesn't want us to unify, because there's a purpose on this people. So there's a purpose on people groups. Yeah. God created people groups on purpose. God created different skin colors on purpose. We come from a family of believers, or we come from a family of people who look like us, and that could be our immediate family, and that can also be a continent of people you come from. And for some reason, there has been this agenda to separate those people, to make sure that they stay separate, to make sure that they do not understand what is at play here. And I don't think humans are honestly that smart to be that organized. So it has to be like something demonic. It has to be a principality. It has to be something of that nature, in that form, in that fashion, that is set up against. And so, God's enemy hates us. And so that just, for me, that does not excuse people who have intentionally made it their legacy to destroy people. That does not give them a pass. They still have to take ownership over that, and they still have to take responsibility for those things. But I know who my enemy is, and my enemy is not a person. Because I can sit up here and argue with people all day. I can argue with people on Facebook all day, and it's exhausting me. Now I can't unify because my brain power is depleted because I gave it to that. Wow. Instead, I can use my resources and my energy to sow into what I know, sow into the kingdom of heaven on earth, which is people groups being unified. God is calling for all the nations, all the people to come to him. You know what I mean? So, I think in all that, I think that the unification of Black people is important, and it's timely. We need it right now. Like, I think there's an urgency on it. Like, there should be this sense of urgency for us to come together and to put aside our differences. And they aren't really anything. Our differences are what we don't, it's like our cousins we haven't met yet. We don't have real differences. So I'm looking forward to the future where we have great movements of revival and great movements of unification, where all Black people come together and there's no separatism anymore. And I even see people come from other places, whether it be the Caribbean or whether it be Africans who lived in Europe or in other places in Africa, where they come to America and they separate themselves from African Americans because they don't want to be associated with us. And, they think we're lazy, or they think that we want a handout, or we have a victim mentality, or, they have all these stereotypes about us as well. And, I think it would take all of us just putting down our defenses, because all those things are meant to survive. We're trying to survive somewhere, that we're trying to survive in a place that we don't think belongs to us. But it does. Like I said before, wherever your 2 feet are is yours. You have authority over that place. wherever your 2 feet are standing, you have a right to. You have dominion over that place. So I think that we have to lay aside our defenses in our means of survival. And surviving in a white world, we do all types of things so that we can make it in white society. We do things to our bodies. We change our hair. And, if whatever your preference is, that is A-okay with me. But I also know that to an extent, those things are dangerous, because we're trying so hard to become somebody else in hopes that they'll somehow not see the skin. Like, maybe if I straighten my hair a little bit more, they won't see, or maybe if I bleach my skin a little bit more, they won't notice. They still see it. So it doesn't matter. You might as well be yourself. You might as well. And I've been saying lately that, God He is not interested in the fake you. Like, He doesn't want a fake you. He doesn't want the fake you walking around, the representative that you've created, this mask you put on, all this stuff you do, the voice that you change when you go into your work. Like, he's not interested in that person. He didn't make that person. That person is not in the image of God. That person is in the image of somebody else. So he is interested in the person he made in the image of himself, which is you and I. and we have to embrace that person. We have to embrace her. We have to embrace him. So yeah.
Wow.
I'm looking forward to the family reunion.
I know, and it's coming soon. Yes. And you can see like there's a huge attack on. I think we are the most attacked people in the world, and I was just reflecting a month ago, even just history-wise. Like, remember when I was sharing to you that even in South Africa, even in Africa, we don't learn our history. We learn European history. And it's also whitewashed,
Right.
When you learn about the colonizers coming, it's all, they saved Africa, they saved South Africa, they saved, there's no truth. There's no truth revealed. And we are the only people group who aren't taught their history, like literally.
Exactly.
In Asia, they taught their history. In Europe, they taught history, but it's all lies. In Africa, we are taught European history. We're not taught our own history. So we all have to take it upon ourselves to actually find out who we are. But when you recognize the attack, you see how, because I feel that Black people are the only people who, when you fight for your own people, you're fighting for everyone else. Like, we don't see
so
color. We go back to the origins of like being African. Right. We are so welcoming, we are so, even with colonization, I was telling Stella the other time that it's not a weakness that we openly welcomed, the colonizers, because that's who we are. That is the African spirit. And the weirdest thing is when Black people rise up, when Black people fight for their rights, then it gives voice to everyone else. The Hispanics will come around and say, us too. And the Asians will come around and say, us too. Yes. And we are the most attacked group because we don't want to bring, like, we don't see separation. We don't see this thing of, like, you stay with your people, you stay with your people. We are the higher people. No, we are the most humble people, like, throughout the world. And this is why the enemy is here to take that away from us. And the weirdest thing is when he tries, the more he tries, we actually get better with our identity, knowing that, oh, this is who we are. So you can't take our voice away from us, because once our voice is gone, the whole world actually loses who they are, loses of themselves, loses the identity, because as you've said before, God created diversity, but it's not for separation. Like, he's given each people group their own specific missions, and that the Black people group mission is one that encompasses everyone, that brings everyone together, that is there to celebrate with everyone else. So you can see why there's a big attack on that, and why the enemy doesn't want that to happen.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Like, it's one thing about the enemy. I don't like talking about him too much because he don't matter. But one thing about him is that he's strategic. And so for that, let that be the only reason you even know anything that he does, is that there's a strategy. And once you find out what that is, we know how to fight that. We know how to come against that thing. We know how to partner with God. We know we've been doing it since the beginning of time. Black people have always been connected to God. We've always been connected to spirituality. It's like God is, I think he's so interested in our liberation and and black liberation as a whole. Like, I got to study that just a little bit. Oh man, I loved it so much. I took a course at FAMU last semester, actually, and I got to study Black feminism and Black liberation, and it changed my life. It was the most glorious thing, because those people, I'll tell you what, they knew God. Like, those early writings, they knew something. Like, you could feel the Spirit of God all over these writings. And I'm like, these people, they could get killed for this stuff. I say stuff like this on Facebook for fun. They could die. And but I'm watching that, in that sense, we have a privilege today and we have more access today than we've ever had. And
what would you love Africans to know about African Americans?
That's a good question. I would say, I think our culture is so much on display that you probably know a lot more than you think. But I think one thing that we need is grace, a lot of grace. I think one thing about American Black culture being so popularized words. You know what I'm trying to say. But one thing about it being so front and center in pop culture is that we everybody gets to see the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so I think that it gives an opportunity for people to criticize openly. It gives opportunity for people to, as they call culture vultures, take our culture and appropriate it. It causes for a lot of things, but at the same time, I think that from other Black people around the world, we need support, we need prayer, we need covering. We need to know that, and I've had so many say, like, you're welcome home. You're welcome to come back home. And I think it's always powerful. It's always powerful when I hear that, because I feel like there's an actual invitation to come back to a home that I've never known, And in a sense, I think for a lot of African Americans, we experience orphanism. We experience not knowing our motherland and our mother and father, so to speak, and we're separate, and therefore identity is harder to come by. And for those of us who catch a hold of identity and catch a hold of what was always meant for us, even though despite ever stepping foot on the land or being connected to the people, that is a feat in itself. Like, that is the grace of God, if I've ever seen in my life, So, for those who do know something we don't know, it's kind of like when you see a baby walking around and like, okay, if I don't put something up against the corners of the counters, they're gonna hurt themselves. Or if I don't, if you don't put certain measures in place, they're gonna constantly be wounded, and they're not gonna be able to heal, and they're not gonna be able to grow right. And so, and I'm not saying it's anyone's responsibility to become our mothers, but for those who can take that responsibility, you should. I think that anywhere that there are people who are motherless and fatherless, and you have the capacity on a personal basis, from a personal basis to a global basis, if you have the opportunity or the capacity to mother and father people who don't have a mother and father, you should always take that. You should never leave people, because that is what God requires of us. He called us to cover the orphans and the widows and the people who are outliers, the marginalized. Like, He literally asked us to cover the marginalized people so that they have a home, because He didn't intend for us to be spiritually homeless. He didn't intend for us to be physically homeless either. So, I hope that for those who have that calling and that mandate over their lives and feel that responsibility, that they take a hold of that they actually take the responsibility of mothering people who have been orphanized, have been victimized, and bringing us back into health, because that's not who we are. We're not victims. We're not orphans, but we've been orphanized and we've been victimized. And though that is completely, being a victim and being victimized are two different things. People, when you are victimized, that is no fault of your own. But to maintain that, it takes you being intentional about it. It takes you accepting it as your identity, and that's what we don't want to do. So there's a lot of undoing necessary. There's a lot of for Black Americans, we have to undo so much. We have to unlearn so much, and I know that's true for you as well. We all are unlearning the toxic things that we've adapted out of mere survival to just stay alive, to thrive in a place that, and in you guys' case, people moved into your land and took it as their own. And that's just bizarre. I don't understand.
I know. Imagine coming into my house and saying like, "Wow, I'm home. You guys go find another home, but this is my home."
And I'm like, no, like what? Like, and it's just that sometimes when you see stuff like that, you like, man, like there's no justice, because who do I call to restore this? I can't call the police to kick them out of my home. Like, and that's where Black people find themselves feeling uncovered most of the time, where we literally and figuratively, there's no justice a lot of the time. And so, but I think we can find out in one another, in our support and organization and strategy, to find out how do we regain what was taken from us? How do we regain what was lost? Whether that be spiritually or physically. And again, I'm not against, I'm not for physical violence at all the time. So here I go. But I don't endorse violence, so let me put it like that. But I do understand when it has taken place and when it has found itself as the only means available to restore the injustice. And we see that in the Bible as well, So anyway, here I go on another tangent. But yes, we need quite a bit. But we also know as we regain strength and health, we also have a responsibility to be that to others. And to bring some of the resources we might have gained by virtue of being in this country, or not virtue, however you want to think about that. But by virtue, by being Americans, we have access to certain things that the rest of the world may not. And so we can bring those things to the table as well, And that's not to say we're better or have any type of elitism in any way, shape, or form. I don't believe that one bit. But it is to say that we have a level of privilege here in this country. It's undeniable. Like, I live in privilege, and that's hard to say because I know all the other things that come with that, being in the skin in this country. But I also know that compared to, I don't know, just other people in America, I have privilege over other people in America. Like, I know people I might not have money all the time, but I know people who have lived in extreme poverty in this country, and it's almost like unimaginable. And you're like, how in America are people living in this type of poverty? Like, there's such wealth disparity and so many other things. But anyway, you get my point.
Wow. And you had this, you said this, I don't know what you were commenting on, but it was this amazing vision. And then you said, we are like the missionaries. Black people are the missionaries. Can you explain that even more?
Yeah, I personally, I think that in some weird way, not weird, but in some alternate reality, Black people are missionaries to America. Like, I think that we brought here an expression of God that was missing from the West, and all over the world. Wherever you see Black people worship, it is you won't see anything else like it. You won't. It's like this drawing, this beckoning, and this fragrance that is being submitted to the Lord, and it's just an all around powerful experience to me. And I know that the enemy comes to pervert those things, but I know that when I've seen it in its purity, everybody, it's undeniable. Everybody says what it is. Everybody says, "Wow, you came here and you brought something." And we often think we're going to go into Africa and go into some other place and bring the gospel. When I'm like, people already got it. Like, when I go on business trips, I'm like, what y'all got for me? Because I do not know what I'm talking about. I do not know it all. And to assume so is to be the biggest idiot alive, like, to be honest with you. Like, and it's to not be humble. And, but yeah, is that what you were talking about, or was it something else I said?
Yeah. Because Stella, in our second talk, she said something similar, but it was regarding the whole world, because the diaspora is like everywhere.
Right.
And I think the white supremacists is like, hey, I think now, like, it's clicking. Like, these people are everywhere now. This is why this immigration thing has just come on, because it's not only in the US, but it's also in Europe, where they see that, we have so many Black people here, we don't want them, you know, they have to go back home. And it's not even a population thing. It's not only they taking up space physically, but they taking up space and everything else. Because for a Black person being out of their own country, they know that I'm not only doing this for myself, but I'm doing it for the generations to come. Back home, it's not only about the money that I'll have, but it's also about the skills, the knowledge, and everything that I'll be bringing back home. And what Stella said was, she just mentioned how Black people are also missionaries wherever they are, wherever God placed them, because it's not by accident, because a lot of Africans are migrants also, and it's not only an economic thing. It's not only because of war. It's just God had appointed those families to go to certain places and raise their children up in those places for such a time. So with us being so scattered throughout the world, God is doing something in those spaces, and God is restoring Christianity within us first, so that we can actually display the true Christ wherever we are.
Exactly. Well, yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the whole concept of, you know, the first will be last and the last will be first. There is a reason why. I think it's a build-up. It's been this massive build-up, this massive anticipation for a comeback, like for us to be put at the front again. But you know, being at the front it implies leadership. It implies and it requires a strength and a resilience that we've developed. We've long since had. You know, so I think we're more than ready and capable to lead the world and what family looks like, and to lead the world in an encounter with God, and to lead the world in revival, and so many other aspects. To lead the world in finance and wealth, to lead the world in so many different regards, because that's what's on us. That's what our identity actually is.
Wow.
And that's not to negate whatever other people groups have, but one thing about it, I remember in ministry school, people would hear me talk about, you know, the Black community and things around that nature, and they would say, well, why don't you talk about Asian people or Hispanic people? And I would say my answer to them would be, because I'm not Asian or Hispanic. Like, y'all are. And I fully 100%, when you want to stand up, when you want to come to the defense of, or educate on behalf of, or be a voice for your people, I will support you. I will be behind you. I will be championing you 100%. But I cannot do that for you because I am not you. And so, what do other people groups have on their as their calling? I don't know. They have to seek that for themselves, and it's not my responsibility to know, because I'm not the carrier of it. But I am the carrier of this, and I can tell people what this is and how God is. He is planning for a major comeback. He is planning for a major return on the lost. It can't be any other way. I know that God is purposeful and intentional that way. So
wow.
Yeah, and so wherever we are, wherever we find ourselves, wherever we find our 2 feet planted, is yours to take. Whether that's, and I think it is a sacrifice that is noted by God, noted by the kingdom of heaven, when you step away from your family, when you step away from, when you are sent out. Like, I'm here in DC, and I don't have any of my immediate family here, but I often think, oh Lord, you keep sending me places away from my family. Like, what the heck? But he's like, it is a notable sacrifice It is a noble sacrifice to be sent from your family because you're taking dominion. You're planting your 2 feet somewhere that I've told you to be, so that something can be restored in that place. And so I don't know if that makes sense, but that's my personal that's my personal viewpoint on that, is that I'm standing in this place because something has to be won, and I am one of a select few that can do it. The world needs me. The world needs you. The world needs every single one of us. We are not, the industry is not oversaturated with Black pride and Black love. And the industry, we need all of it. Bring all of it. Like, we need more of it. We need there to be like this overflow, this abundance, because there's not too much. It can never be too much. So.
Wow, that is powerful. And in closing, what would you like to say?
Well,
what's on your mind?
I, like all of you guys, thanks for listening. I want to say that I believe that God He has set apart people for this time. People have felt overlooked. People have felt like their voice didn't count. Like there's a bunch of other Black people talking about this stuff. I don't need to do it too. Or that your voice might not be respected or valued in the space that you're in, whether you're in a predominantly white space, whether you're in a predominantly white country, whether, like I have friends that are planted in Europe right now who are African, and they are probably one of few that looks like them in that place. And wherever you find yourself in this world, at this time, better believe that it is for an appointed purpose and a time. Like, you are made for this. You are intentionally planted where you are on purpose. God is doing that in your life. You are not overlooked. You are not forgotten about. Oh, this is the beginning. Like, I literally feel like He is about to start unraveling the point and the purpose of all this stuff right now. Like, for me, I'm in DC, and I moved here because the Lord told me to. And that's... People ask me why I came here. I'm like, literally, God told me to come here. Like, that's it. And I'm watching it unfold, like, more details and more. Every other day, I swear, it's like something else is unfolding, unraveling. I'm like, oh, that's why. Oh, okay. It's becoming clearer. It's becoming more clear, and it's making me feel like more secure in how I stand and how I articulate or how I verbalize the goodness of God in this place. Because and I would say also this, like, open up your mouth and say that God is good. Open up your mouth and say, as Black people, I think there's something so powerful when we thank God, when we literally just offer up that praise, of thanksgiving. Like, it's ushering in the destiny. Like, that's what's next. It's bringing in the destiny. It's bringing in the thing that is coming next. Like, you are literally an usher into the next place. And so I think we're entering a promised land right now. I think all over the world, Black people are entering into a land that has been long promised to us. And there's resistance in that land. You're going to see giants in that land. You're going to see stuff that is like, oh, snap. Okay, this is what we're doing. All right. So you're going to see a lot of things. But that doesn't mean you back down. That doesn't mean that you walk away and say, well, I'm going to let somebody else do this because I can't do it. If it's not in your means to do it, then you're in a good spot. If it's not possible for you to do it, you're in the best spot you can be in. Wow. Because God said, in your weakness, I am strongest. So you always want to be weak. If you think you can do it, that's not good. If you are facing something that feels possible to you, then reevaluate, get back on the drawing board. So yeah, I just want to say that because I think that that's not being said enough. And I think that one of my purposes in life is to equip the saints and get them ready for what is next. And so I take the opportunities I can to do that, to prophesy over the situation and say that it is improving. Your finances are improving. You are not impoverished. You don't have to accept the identity that's been placed on you by the world or by the community you grew up in. I grew up in a poor community in Cleveland. And by the standards of that community, I'm not supposed to have a college degree. I'm not supposed to have X, Y, and Z. I'm not supposed to have a lot of things, but guess what? I'm coming for every single thing anybody said I couldn't have. I'm coming for every single thing that has been held back from me. And, there's no limit, So I want to leave you guys with that. I hope that was encouraging. I hope that you all find your place in this world, and that you realize how powerful and brilliant you are, and that you believe that Black people are powerful and brilliant people. That you come from that. You come from that legacy. You come from that lineage. That's who you are. And yeah, there's bad stuff or negative attributes to any people. Excuse me, burps. there's like, there's negative whatever anywhere, but you don't have to focus on that. You can focus on the goodness of God. If you need something to set your eyes on, if you need something to attach yourself to, you can do that with the presence of God. You can do that with the facts in the matter that God is good, period, all the time. And that sounds like a cliche, but that is the real statement out here. I don't care. So, yeah.
One more question. When are you coming to Africa?
Whenever I get some money, which is going to be soon, right? Because, I don't live in poverty, so. I got my passport.
Where would you like to travel next?
I most definitely, which part of Africa? Okay, Noella promised me a tour of Kenya. She think I forgot. I did not forget. She literally told me that she was going to be my tour guide, so that's happening. And then definitely coming to South Africa to see you. And I definitely want to go to Ghana. And I don't know, so many other places. I'm down. I planned at some point in my life to spend like an entire year just traveling the continent.
And have you taken the DNA test yet? Or
no, I haven't yet.
Ancestry test. You must let us know your results.
I know, right? I should. Maybe that'll be a Christmas present that my family and I do. Yeah, that's cool. I think. Have you? Well, you don't need to do one, but. Yeah.